Good evening, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Owl Bob. I am your Sensei Owl Bob, and tonight we are going to have a reflective point of view, and we're going to look at what has occurred in the last, well, today's morning and afternoon chats with John Birmingham. And I did those because it was the only way to have a reflective moment, right? And I first want to make a promo saying that everything that is on Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob is strictly for laughs and giggles. And I hope you're laughing and giggling as we speak right now, because everything within the construct of Luciferian illusion of the material world is a joke, you know? Just like whenever anyone gets so full of themselves that the world revolves around them, that everything's, they get upset and get, and that's why the today's little strolls with John Birmingham were about a reflective point of view, to get perspective, to see where things are, right? And here we are, right? And I just have a few fun stories to tell you. And basically, what is life about? Life is about experience. Life is about being there, right? Life is about being awake enough to appreciate the things rather than expecting a certain outcome and being disappointed when it doesn't happen. My life is a total surprise, minute to second to nanosecond. And I navigate. I don't expect. I don't project. You know. And the concept of anticipation has an interesting little bit of a construct to you know a dealing of a frame. You frame what you're, oh boy, I'm looking forward to this, right? But if you don't expect an outcome, you don't expect, a certain end game, if you're just open to experience what's coming, then that's really life. That's what it's about, right? And if you can enjoy those moments, that's what it's about. That's what it's here for. Because this is just a sandbox, heaven and hell, we're here, right now. It's not like, oh, I have to be really good so I go to heaven, right? So, with that said, I'm going to take off these googly glasses and put on my glasses so I can see if anyone has said anything. Not yet. There's one person there. We've been at it for 4 minutes and 44 seconds. Again, another good synchronistic moment. But I'm going to start off with, as a child, I came into this world miraculously. I had my mother's umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, and the moron male doctors were trying to pull me out with forceps. Right? And there was a doctor there who is a female doctor, just, out of Johns Hopkins, and she was there, and she was about, her specialty was about infant mother trauma, right? And she was like, she had a PhD and an MD, and she wrote all about birth trauma. And she was trying to change all the protocols, you know, so the mother and the infant, A, wouldn't die because at that time, the number of infant mother fatalities were quite amazing. And though the poor, and especially the black and other individual race groups, had a higher level, it was across the board. You know, rich women were losing their babies. My mom lost two babies, right? Due to the incompetence of the doctors. And my mother ran hospitals. You know, she was the god of medicine. But when they knock you out, there's not much you can do. So, and that's one reason why in operations, um, they knock you out because the doctor doesn't want to be bothered by the patient. It wouldn't probably be good because then you have a little feedback there. And other folks who do surgery, psychic surgeons, they don't knock people out. Not with drugs, not with chemicals. They put pressure on certain parts of the vagus nerve so they don't feel things. But I don't know. So anyway, there I was in my mother's years, and I was, sent there by a higher power. I kind of volunteered for the task. That's why I'm here as your Sensei Al Bob. But I was a lucky bastard. Every element of my life has been miraculous. My butt has been pulled out of the fire more times than I can know, right? Because I am here to be your Sensei Al Bob. I survived 6 deaths this life. Not in, reincarnation. This life. The first one was when I was being born. So this doctor who was there observing basically saw what was going on and pushed the doctors out of the way. And one of them was the head, you know, baby delivery doctor. And, basically pushed me back in, unfurled, turned me around and unfurled the umbilical cord around my neck and then eased me out. These guys were going to pop my head off like a tick, right? And if you go to my blogspot, xratted.blogspot, that whole scene is in that novel, right? Along with the story from Las Vegas, um, the heavens for all of the angles, those German characters who basically destroyed the Roman Empire just for giggles. And I was a car hop at a gambling casino that the old knowing Bob stopped by every so often for a lap dance. And he picked me up and said, "Come with me." So again, go to my blogspot, xratted.blogspot.com. Hey there, Jane. Yep, we're coming up. There's here. I've been on the here for about 10 minutes almost. It's 9:49 minutes and 49 seconds. Rounding the bend. Of course, reincarnation. Reincarnation makes sense. We're put on in this material illusion world of Luciferian dynamics to learn, meaning love's co-creation creates everything, even this hell on earth, right? And in the construct of reincarnation, then it's not so bad because whatever you go through this life, you come back again and work it out, right? And if you're awake enough, and that's why I carried the two little conversations with John Birmingham today, um, and he couldn't help himself. You know, he had to be in front of that camera. And even though he said, "Why are you doing this?" You know, and two things happened. It calmed him down because he was about to attack me, and by putting him in front of the camera, he became his better self. And yet, the thing about our lives are that we are meant to have a good time. That's why I have this funny hat, right? And that's why I was at the beginning wearing these. Uh, these are my magic glasses. They really give me a good sense of vision, right? And my whole life has been one of extraordinary outcomes through horrific situations. And right off the bat, when I should have died at birth, but I didn't because this amazing um, angelic female doctor who changed the course of gynecology because she was a woman. Before that, all the guys were sticking their mitts up women's hoo-hoos. But she specialized in a mother and infant trauma, birth trauma, and she was trying to release it, change it, and to make things better. And she had to go up against the old male um, institution. So that was the first time my life was interceded by an angel. Um, and my whole life. So my mother, I came from an extraordinarily Catholic family. But luckily, my grandma took me away, and she was Roman. She was Italian, but she came from. She was an intelligent, self-educated, well-read um, woman, and she had an amazing husband, my grandfather, and they were a great team. And she was out to change the world, and in that you know little pebble of a way, she's the one who kind of got me into that idea of being the pebble. You're wearing head? No, no, not on. I'm just wearing a hat. One of my funny hats. I'm not wearing a microphone. It's coming out of the bottom of the phone. Can you hear me now? Anyway, there's five of you there. We're into it for 13 minutes and 31 seconds. It's good now. Good. Okay, I took my finger off the hole there. Anyway, so I'm going to tell you a few stories of, catastrophe turning into a good time. And that's kind of what, I keep talking about. We need to develop an alternative aesthetic. And that's what we have to do, take catastrophe and turn it into not just a good time, because most people think a good time is like doing drugs or alcohol or, just totally wacko shit. And that's a good time, making fun of somebody, making somebody else feel miserable. No, sorry, that's not. Good time is like going out dancing. Good time is having a hike where your body feels extraordinarily great, you know? It's all your perspective, right? And that's why I had John Birmingham in front of the camera, because he was like going on. I mean, he should be ecstatic. He's had 2 years to do whatever the heck he wanted to. He's in the most amazingly beautiful house. I'm sure you've gone on his channel. He's gives it's like the Home Decorating Network. He kind of gives a tour of it, but it's more about like, look at what's mine, instead of looking how amazing this place is. Meaning, I lived here. I paid the taxes on this place for 15 straight years, but I never thought it was mine. It was the hill, it was the school. I was just privileged to be here, and by having that perspective, I had a great time because I had a lover, I had a friend, I had a entity here that was happy to see me and loved my dogs and made my life really great, right? And and there were a lot of issues here. This is George and Inga, who never really built things, built this place, and it has issues. And John fixed most of them and cleaned it up and turned it into, meaning this was more my warehouse than it was, because I had a place down in the Keys and I had a place down in the Deep Green and I had another place in West Virginia. And I would go from one to the other, right? Spend 3 weeks here, 3 weeks there. When it was really great to be where it was to be great, I would go there and have a great time. And I would get involved in this, that, and the other thing and spend a couple weeks or a month or whatever it took and then move on to the next thing, right? And that's how my life goes, right? But it's changed, since I spent 10 years working in the corporate world with the desperate lawyers and, gained 230 pounds by living in a chocolate swimming pool of moose, and I have to say that I enjoyed every second of that, you know, um, materialistic life. Had I wasn't a but I had more money than I had before. I had enough money to do whatever the heck I wanted. Want to take an airplane ride? Not a problem. You want to buy a car? Not a problem. Want to do this? Not a problem. But I didn't have zillions because I didn't need to have zillions. My grandma gave me 28 rules to live by. One of them was live like a millionaire, but don't work like one. Don't be one. Don't sell your soul to be a millionaire, right? So, and I was working in an environment that, was energetically toxic to me. I mean, one of the reasons I gained all that weight and died was not only the weight I put on, but the energetics of that corporate scene and the anxiety of everyone and the fear and loathing that everyone had. And one of the reasons I was so successful, I would just walk in with hats like this, wearing clothes like this, but even worse, with two dogs on either side of me, like I was Moby listening to gangster rap, and I owned the place. I walk into a conference room with millionaires who thought they were the top shit, and I owned them because, I was brought in to negotiate. The judge gave the lawyers the power to negotiate. They couldn't do it. I represented them, so I could do whatever the heck I wanted, and it was really loads of fun to do cold readings on these rich, just despicable people and tell everyone in front of everyone who and what they really were. They kind of all knew it, but and they go, "How do you know that?" And one of the things I did was uh, my little trick, and it's all theater. I'm a theater guy. And I would have them in the boardroom, and I would take the board table out and those comfy tables, and I would give them all. I would go to the Goodwill and buy rusted, rickety TV dinner tables and folding chairs that were about to fall apart and would pinch your butt, right? And I would get those cups from the Dollar Tree that when you put water in, you pick them up like this. They split on the side and the water goes in your lap. And I would go out to the parking lot and take dirty water from a mud puddle and put it in a pitcher, and that's what they got to drink. I they never drink it because they would pick, I poured that brown crap would go into the cup. They picked the cup up, it would split on the side and go all over their $1,000 outfit. And they couldn't do anything about it. And I had, when you go into the store and they got the little video balls on the ceiling. Anyway, I would have one of those cameras trained on each person and on my little laptop. And I would find the king chair, the big chair that had the thing and the leather and the comfy and the nice and, wood carving. And I would have a beautiful table on either side. And I had big pillows for my dogs to lie on. And I would keep them in that room. I would have the key to the door. They would all go in. I'd lock the door. I wouldn't let them go to the bathroom, right? And at more upset that I would just videotape them being upset. And there was a big screen, like 60-inch TV on the wall that I'd have put there. And every time they would, be obstructionists, I would play the point when they were the most miserable, disgusting person, and everyone they would see it themselves, and everyone else would see it. And I would just sometimes I would just hit the button, hit the button, hit the button, hit the button, hit the button on my laptop, and play it over and over and over until the okay, I'll sign, I'll sign, I'll sign. Right? Now that was kind of fun for about 8 years. But that's what nearly freaking killed me, you know. So my whole life has been moments like that, right? And so one of the when I was so I got thrown out of the Catholic monastery, right? Because I was being too much like Jesus. You know, I was thinking about the needs of the poor and the suffering rather than the rich people, right? And that's what they wanted me to do. You know, they wanted me to always think about the rich people so we could get more money. And I would say, no, those people are, no. And so, and that's where I learned you can't fight City Hall. You can go around it, you can go up it, you can go down it. You can inject with humor an antibody to their selfish self-loathing. And all religions are focused on the ego and the self-loathing of their selfishness. It's all about them. And that's kind of what I put up with John Birmingham today and every day, because I would just catch him today. I would go get my phone because he would stick his phone in my face. Let's do this, let's do that, blah, 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 right? And so I was, saturated in this Catholic family, but saved because I grew up with my grandma and other people, right? And I went off to, private schools most of my life. So I had teachers, even though I was, like when I was in grammar, second and third grade, because I went off to Catholic school, and the nun nearly killed me, we were, it was right during the height of duck and cover and before the Cuban Missile Crisis. And, we were right there. You could see the Empire State Building. And every day and everyone got under their desk, and I wouldn't do it. And because I saw a nuclear explosion with my father when he was in the Air Force in Nevada. And I saw it was just a little thing, and nothing like the hydrogen bombs that Russia was going to, use the Empire State Building as ground zero. And I wouldn't get out. And the nun said, you have to get under your desk to protect yourself. I said, sister, we have this big glass window here, right? When they drop that hydrogen bomb, right, about 3,000 feet above the Empire State Building, it will detonate. And the X-ray and plasma energy that will go faster than the speed of light will come, and whether we're under this or in a basement, it will saturate and will break down the atoms of our bodies. And then the light will hit us and burst us into flames. And then a nanosecond after that, the concussive force will blow through that glass and shoot it down at supersonic speed like razor blades and cut us up into burning, disintegrating pieces of bologna, and then blow us into dust, all within about 3 seconds. So why should I get under this desk? And that's when she grabbed me by the neck, put me against the wall, and just went bam, bam, bam. Broke the orbit. That's why this eye, I can't see out of too well. First grade, a nun crushed my optic nerve and crushed my orbit into my optic nerve. Broke my jaw, and that's why I lost all of my wisdom teeth, in the first grade. And broke all the fingers in this hand. Luckily, it's not the one I write with. And then they dragged me out. They dragged her off of me because she was going to kill me because I must have snapped something in her. And, I have a tendency to do that with people, And as one of my clients once said, Al, I love you, buddy. But you're an acquired taste. I said, yeah, but that's part of my talent, to really get underneath people's skin. And he goes, well, you really do the job for me. So, but the silver lining in that one, I was sent off to study for 2 more years. My favorite teacher of all times, Miss Gurley. She was my kindergarten teacher, and she was just beautiful and gorgeous, and the essence of like an angel with blonde hair, and just so sweet. Did everything. Just was a great teacher too. Just so I stayed in kindergarten for second and third grade, and then in that period also I would go visit this group of Maryknoll priests in Garden City, and I was had the best, this unconditional love of Miss Gurley, the unconditional love of my grandma, and this amazing discipline and freedom of thought by these Maryknoll priests. And they were a psycho-social, cultural, forensic, anthropologic, alchemist group of guys. And there were some nuns, and none of them wore the penguin suits. They wore, civvy clothes. Exactly. Yep. Clockwork Orange. John is that, but he doesn't. He beats himself up with a club rather than other people, right? And I try to, and I am very, I can keep him, somewhat balanced and somewhat seeing things and somewhat getting more and more aware. But, after 40 years of being there, just being with me for 2 years, not so much. And I'm not his shrink. I'm his friend. There's a big difference, right? And he needs to have someone, and I have friends who are really great shrinks in this town, and he won't go to see them. Well, we're all a lot like John sometimes. It's just how much awake and aware we are, right? Yes, right. And when I reflect, like the first one, I was, he said, "Stop fighting me! Oh, you're scared." No, I was like, shamanically, like a laser beam, straight into his superconscious mind, where the little boy is stuck. Right? I was trying to free him, and that's why because he was going to get violent, and I switch that off like that. But he was going, "You're yelling at me." Well, no, I wasn't yelling. I was talking with my shamanic voice, my in your subconscious mind voice, right? And then he kind of, talked about what he's experienced, what made him the way he is. That was pretty amazing. That, and I wanted all of you to see that. But his anxiety is self-motivated. It's not coming from external sources. The external sources that put his neuroses there. Now that happened at childhood, and happened in grammar school, and happened in middle school and high school, but he precipitated and perpetuated those experiences because he was comfortable. And that's part of neuroses. We're more comfortable with the suffering than doing the work to break ourselves away from that unconscious suffering, that brings us to being awake, being conscious, and that's what this, so that's why I did what I did today, putting that up there, and I'm going to keep that up there because, like, you said, Sarah, you identify with it, you can relate to it, right? But you can use it as a tool for perspective because John Birmingham is not you, or any of you. And I don't know, you all noticed, energetically, I can see you all, and you all have had issues, right? Because that's what we're here to experience, And why am I your sensei, Alba? Because I've had, died 6 times. I've been in way, 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 way more amazingly catastrophic and heart-wrenching situations. But I had the teachers to say, okay, You can learn from this. Don't let this, crush you. Don't let this end your life. This is a positive experience. You can. So when that nun, blinded me in one eye, broke my jaw, and got rid of the teeth in the back of my head, and broke my fingers, all of these, um, I used it to go to a better place, have better teachers, not be stuck in that hellhole. It was called Hitler's Rifle Squad, Holy Redeemer School, HRS, Hitler's Rifle Squad. And it was, because everybody shot, it was a circular firing squad. Everyone picked on everyone was a bully. And I had two friends in that school, Jimmy and Teddy Werner. And they were, Teddy was really big for his size, not heavy, but really tall. He was my age, and he was like almost 5'7", and I was like 4'2". And his brother, Jimmy, he too was a little peanut, right? And so he was like the Jolly Green Giant, and he walked on tippy toes, right? All the time. And he was pretty interesting because he was very self-aware, and that he was bigger than everybody else, and that everyone was somewhat scared of him. And so he never was a bully, and he always kind of came to the rescue of people who were being bullied. And he had these really big feet, and he used to just walk up to them, step on their feet, and push them down. And it would sprain their ankles so they couldn't get back up. And then he didn't have to do anything else, right? And I remember one time, this guy, got his ankles, and then he was going to go after him, right? So it was amazing because Teddy had these gigantic hands. This guy tried to hit Teddy up backside the head, sneaking up on him. And Teddy just turned around, and this guy was in mid-swing, and Teddy just grabbed the bat, right? Took it like this and knocked him right here with the end of the baseball bat, and the guy went down. And, everyone saw it. All the schools saw it, all the teachers saw it. So Teddy didn't really get into trouble. And a good portion of the nuns who were being bullied themselves by these psycho nuns, like the one who beat the crap out of me, appreciated him, right? And so there were two priests who were not pedophiles. The rest were. And, they appreciated Teddy. And Teddy wasn't a bully, and he didn't, use his power inappropriately, right? And he didn't really hurt people. Even the bullies he didn't hurt, right? But him and Jimmy were my only two friends. Well, this is true. That's exactly what he is. He's a big, annoying kid. Huh? But we all have that big, annoying child inside of us. It's whether we deal with it. That shows how adjusted. We all have our issues, and it's how we deal with it, right? And I've been very blessed to have amazing teachers my whole life, and that's why I am being yours. I was constantly being told, you're going to have to do what we're doing for you, kid. You just learn this well, and I have been there. And even when I worked for the desperate lawyers, making the millionaires squirm, because I had very little time. They'd only bring me in when I was the last resort, when they had nothing else to lose, right? They tried all of their legal things, and it, brought me in when, okay, if we don't get these guys to agree, we're going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. If we let him in and he does his little magic thing, then, and they all sign the contract, well, then we're going to be in clover, right? And I had 100%, in the 10 years I did that, I never once did not get people to, sign the contract. And the other thing that happened, the only reason why they signed is that they saw the real reason to live, not to being a dickhead, not to make, show that they were powerful, but to have a life that they could enjoy and learn things from. And virtually every one of those projects I had, every one of those dickheads after it would hug me and cry and say how much they changed their life. This one guy who was really just annoying, he screams, I got everyone on it, and he wouldn't agree. So I just kept pushing his buttons until he screamed. He just screamed and screamed and screamed until he lost his voice. Now you might see John is coughing and you know, a bit on his when he talks to me on screen. That's because a little less than a week, maybe Monday, or maybe last week on Thursday, he totally lost it and was just screaming, right? I mean, for no reason, no, there wasn't anything, I mean, he lives in a beautiful place. Doesn't have to work. He could be making all the art he wants. And he does make, the last video he did of him, skiing down the hill, like, Ronald McDonald, that's a pretty amazing, crazy video, I mean, it's actually what I would call art, and what he makes, he's really good at writing music. He's really good at playing music. He's great at, he's got amazing talents. And he has this opportunity, which he wastes. He just sits here and goes on and on and on about what happened in grammar school and what happened 20 years ago and what happened 10 years ago. And that stuff, the only reason you remember that stuff is if that's a good memory, right? Meaning, so I nearly got murdered in first grade by a nun. But that is just an asterisk. The real memory that I keep is the 2 years I spent with Mrs. Gerling and the Maryknoll family, of Scott. That's where I learned how to be a scholar. When I was second or third grade, I was learning Latin and Greek, and learning how to look at ancient books for the key, the cornerstone. So those are the memories that we're supposed to remember because they give us an assistance to navigate what's right in front of us, what we've experienced. Not the miserable things that we get stuck into neuroses, and then if it keeps going, it goes into psychoses, And you don't need to do that. And the best thing, when I worked with people with PTSD, the best thing at the VA, the best thing you do is you bring up that catastrophe, that shock, and deal with it as soon as possible. Not let it get buried, And at the same time, you put forth an experience of unconditional love, forgiveness, and fun, And we have to figure out a new word for fun: self-awareness through enjoyment, and that would work. And the sooner you could do it, the better it was, right? Waking up, right? You're gonna help me with my problems. Thank God. That's right, Sarah. Right? Waking up, right? Just like Buddha, side of the road, glistening, woo, a kind of moron putz traveler comes, what are you, a god? You god? You god? And Buddha goes, no. Well, what are you, man? What, a magician? What are you? And Buddha replies, I am awake. And that's all it takes, being awake. And then you can have a good time. You can, you don't have to be miserable. I have so many things physically wrong with me, but I'm still alive. So that thanks Jesus, and it brought me back to my aesthetic self, meaning I have to meditate, go into state 5, 10 times a day, right? And that's good because I had ignored it for, a good 10 years, and, or not practice it like I do now. And, I do Tai Chi. I can't really do it. I mean, I just do the first part of the form, but that's what got me to walk, that's when I threw away my walker and my metal clamps on my legs. And why do we fall back? So we can get up. That's what it's about. Stepping up, right? And, it's all about baby steps, little step at a time, little step at a time, little step at a time. And the more we go in state, the more we go into our Akashic record. That book is amazing. It has everything you've ever experienced in this life and everything back to the big frigging bang and everything into the future. You can see everything. You can get the 411 on everything. It's a little hazy on the future because there's so many malleable potentials. And it's also a little hazy when you want to find the lottery number or, get a headline on what the stock market's going to do. I mean, you can do that. There are guys and gals who do that, but the price to pay. Like most of the people who won the lottery and then end up dead in their car, because they've done, something to win that lottery. Not just let, the righteousness of what you could do with that money and that you would do with that money, So, let's see, a story to tell. So when I got thrown out of the seminary, and I had this girlfriend, Virginia Manley, and she was in a Catholic school too, and we were when we met, it was like lightning bolts, just, the physicalness of it was like, wow. So, but again, there was this Catholic thing in both of us that we did everything erotically. We were eros, but we didn't consummate anything, right? But boy, could we kiss. Boy, could we touch each other. Boy, could we have loads of fun, because we would, if she lived in Connecticut, I would go pick her up at Penn Station. And I was only 13, but I walked all over New York City as a little kid, so that was not a big deal. And my parents basically trusted me more than any of my, siblings. And I was the youngest. And so we would go and do stuff that grown-ups would do. And people just look at us like, because we were 13, 14. And we would, on the subway, we'd make out. On the train, we would make out. In the museum, we'd make out. And we would be, like I said, we never consummated anything, but the energy between us was like everyone, when we started being intimate with each other, it would affect other people. Other people, I remember one time we were on a subway and we started, being sweet on each other. And, when that happened, this kind of lovey pink haze came over and there was nobody around us. And when I realized, we got to get off pretty soon, I looked around, everyone in that subway was making out and other people were not being as controlled. They were actually doing it. And it was and there was a cop there watching it and he was freaking out because everyone was doing it. He had nobody to do it with. And he was almost doing something even more inappropriate in a uniform. And it was because she and I were these two, erotic eros magicians. I mean, we had this intimacy magic thing that was truly amazing. And we stayed friends for years after that until, we both kind of got married. But even when, we never lived with each other. We were boyfriend and girlfriend, in the first 2 years of high school, but, with the space. But, I learned she taught me how to kiss and touch and do everything. So when all my other girlfriends got the goodness of me being taught by Virginia. And when I got kicked out of the seminary, and my parents moved to New York City, I had to go to this Catholic school and make up for, whole years of school that I was, being a revolutionary. And so I did, and there was another girl there who was, she again, unbelievable Irish, and her father was a doorman on a pretty nice apartment building on Second Avenue, and she and I, a girl, I guess I was 14, she was 15, that we were, doing it, but not really because we didn't know what to do. We weren't really, we were naked, we were having a good time, but we weren't really doing it because she was a bad girl. She just liked being bad, and Virginia was oh, she wasn't a bad girl, but she liked doing things that made people, that just pushed the envelope. She pushed the envelope beyond even the envelope being there. And so anyway, I remember my mom coming and we were on my sister's bed. I didn't have a bed in that apartment. I had to sleep on the couch. But we went into my sister's. She was at work, and my I kind of went into. We went in there and we were fooling around, and we were, like I said, naked and on top of the bed, rolling around, and I hear the door open, and my mom comes in, and the linen closet was in my sister's room, and my mom comes in there with a big arm of sheets and towels and linen. She goes right to the closet and opens it up and puts everything away, and my friend was so involved that she didn't even notice my mom. But I was like stuck, I was like a deer in headlights. Anyway, she just turned around, walked out, and we still went on for another 40 minutes until we kind of got okay, okay, let's get our breaths. And we went and took a shower together, and that was another interesting, intimate moment. And we come back into the kitchen, and my mother has made cookies for us, and has a plate of cookies and glasses of milk, and said, here, kids, have some of this, And it was like, and that was my mom. It was like she was grown up enough to realize, well, okay, they're not really doing it, but they're having fun, and that's they're old enough to do that. So, but she's this Catholic person, and the only thing, it was like okay to do that as long as the other person's Catholic, right? So anyway, that was that summer, and then I went off to this other prep school, Winchendon School for Boys, which was the richest people on earth. Joe Kennedy was one of my roommates, and what a moron! And he's in Congress now. And he used to complain because I'd have my little light on and I'd be reading books. Why are you reading so many books? You know, I said, well, you read books, you kind of learn things. And he said, well, I'm a Kennedy. I don't need to read books. Good stuff. The Dead, I always hated the fans. Let's see what I'm talking about. Well, I have been telling stories. Waking up, indeed, state, yep, light. I've had so many wake ups. And as long as we keep waking up, because we live in a land of illusion. Of course you're going to fall asleep. Don't blame yourself. Just keep waking up. Go into state. Go into state more. The more and more you go into state, the more you'll be awake. Can't phone the graveyard. That's right. Meaning, I was blessed to not have to deal with my family growing up, right? But when I was about 32, I came back, or 30, I came back from Ireland, 1980, after being there for a year or so. And New York had totally stopped being my town. I mean, between Donald Trump and everybody, and that was crushed, all that beauty, back in the day, when you tell people how many political parties are, oh, there's Democrats, Republicans. How many political parties have there been? Oh, there's always been that. No. Between 1890 and 1970, there was the Democrats, Republicans, the Labor Party, the Communist, the Socialist, and the Religious Party, right? and they were all as powerful. Meaning the Democrats and the Republicans were the really powerful ones, and the other ones, of all of them, the most powerful was the unions, and that's why between 1890 and 1970, that's the only period that America was great again. That's the only time that the worker, the average worker in a factory, they made the guy who was the CEO only made 20% more than the guy on the floor, right? Not 8 trillion times, and that's when I grew up in that period, and I was 9 working for Grandpa and Mike Stahl, and Grandpa has the first master electrician's license in the United States. He helped start the IBEW and Local 3 and IATSE and NABIS. So I was in all of those things, Lottery killed me. That's how to play it, right? Well, it gives you that alternative, see what would happen. I was affected powerfully by the energy of a couple near me once. It left me longing and magnetic for days. Yep, that's what Gina and I kind of did. And Teresa too, but we were so sweet. We were like innocent and young, Now there's a great, thing about music. It's harmonic, right? And so I was listening to the White Album of the Beatles, and it brought me back to all, the time when that album was, about 1968, when I was living in the Lower East Side, when Allen Ginsberg was my roommate, Geez Louise. No, actually, all the women were the cat. I mean, I was never the instigator. I was just their ingenue. And that's really what it was. I was the ingenue. I was the muse of all of these women in my life. Because I just opened my heart to them. I didn't try to get over or do anything with them. And I never really was looking at the only one woman that ever kind of, I said, whoa, and I went straight to, was my second wife. And again, you want to read that story, go to xratted.blogspot.com. It's one of my cuts there. Well, I'm still a snuggly bear, And the Dead, they played at the Fillmore East. I kind of, was there on stage with those boys. And they were, did you see that movie about We Are the Champions? They just made that into a movie. They were probably the best band I ever freaking saw. They had amazing, just amazing music, amazing showman, amazing everything. Had this kind of just energy that enthralled. I was at Shea Stadium when they played, or maybe it was in New Jersey. It was a stadium. And there's 30, 40, 50, 60, a lot of people out there. And boy, did they touched every single one of them. It was amazing. So I was listening to the White Album on Alexa, and John came in and basically, shut it off. I said, John, don't you want to listen to that? Why would I want to listen to that? I said, well, because it brings back memories. I don't have, he doesn't have any good memories because he's stuck on the same ones, right? And that's what music, that's why we have life, to have good memories, because those good memories wake us up to do our better self, Why do we get, we are Donald Duck with an angel on one shoulder, devil on the other. And what makes us choose to be our better self, our better angels, are those memories, those positive memories. That's why we have memories, right? And if all we can do is focus on those traumas that really aren't that big a deal, I was a little peanut as a kid, People picked on me all the time. it was just that my brain was thinking about, astrophysics and Tesla toys and all kinds of things. I was seeing energies and space travel, and I was taking space travel. So some moron kid, make fun of me for being small or a shrimp or a peanut. Just went right over. Just didn't even and they would say things, and if I didn't respond to them, they moved on to the next one. And I always, so Teddy Werner, he protected me in Catholic school, and his little brother. And, so I never worried about that. And I was surrounded by elders who cared and loved and guided me rather than traumatized me, right? So I didn't, have to deal with my parents. When I did deal with my parents when I was 30, my brother, you had to take care of us, because he's so that, so on my back, we kind of lost connection there for a moment. Boo, 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 boo. But all those bands, there's a song like Elton John's pretty great, but he has a song that Bernie Tomlin and he wrote called Indian Sunset. Takes me right back to being in a past life being Lakota. There are a lot of songs that Piano Man, Billy Joel, that take me right because he's my same age. He and I are the same age, and we grew up in the same part of Long Island. And I used to, see when he was living on Spring Street. So was I. I would see him, right, and all that. The Piano Man album is all about Spring Street, all about that our neighborhood. All those characters, those songs, Brenda and Eddie. I mean, they were there, and I was there. So that was pretty amazing, right? The pick of the pops is backstage at the Fillmore. Yep, yep. And that's where I was for almost 4 years, back at the stage of Fillmore. Pretty, not every, when I was in prep school, no, but for 3 to 4 months of the year, yeah. Oh, who are you talking there? Queen. Queen is the show. Yep, yep, yep. Queen. Yep, yep. Diplomatic grooviness. Yep, I set up Woodstock, and then they moved it. I mean, we had a sweet place before we had to move it to Yasgur's farm, and we had to do that in weeks, not even like 2 weeks, and so it was a mess. And I got everything working, and then my boss Bob Goddard, who owned Joshua Light Show and Pig Light Show, who did the lights of that and the sound. He sent me back to New York because I was the only one with, who wasn't drunk, stoned, or crazy of our crew and had a valid driver, kind of a valid driver's license. And meaning I drove vehicles for him and never got in trouble. That's as close to a valid driver's license I had. And I got there, went to the shop, loaded it up, and it was like, 8 o'clock. And I said, well, I'll go back tomorrow. I'm just going to go home and take a shower and go to sleep. And, when I woke up and went to the shop, I saw on the TV that they had closed the New York Thruway, so I was not getting there. So I stayed home, very, very happy to. And all my friends were, my coworkers were pissed that I didn't get electrocuted and get, typhoids and didn't do the brown acid, But no one died. Do, 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 do. On my mantle, really, Uncle? 369. Yep. 333. Well, we are in hell and heaven at the same time, just like Donald Duck. And we get to choose. That's what a free will is all about. Yes, I was a shrimp. Well, in a certain way, it's not John's fault, And if I can help him, because I am his friend and I don't give up on my friend, I will do my best. But it's coming to a point where what I do, there's a fine line between me helping him and me enabling him, right? What he really needs, I've tried to turn him on. There are a number of really good shrinks in this town that I know very well. And even though they're like booked up for years, all I have to say is, hey, I have a friend here, and they'll take him. And I already sent him to the best guy, and John blew him off. Dallas Taylor sounds familiar. Who's Lisa? Who's Dallas Taylor? Yes, Joni Mitchell wrote Woodstock, and she was like me. She missed the bus. She couldn't get there. And so she wrote the song not about her experience, but as if, a child of God walking along the road, somebody who didn't make it, right? And that was the best song. That was the anthem of Woodstock, and she wasn't even freaking there. Joni Mitchell was the anthem. I mean, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young would never have been that without Joni Mitchell, right? She made them all who they were. So, did you guys go look at my? I did a story about Joni Mitchell on John's channel, but I did a much more thorough story, meaning all the stories that I've put down on John's are just a thumbnail, and I've done way more thorough stories that that are energetically connected. So when you go there, you're not just hearing me tell you the story; you're there with Joni Mitchell, right? So go look for the Joni Mitchell story, and if you can't find it, I'll tell it again. Yes, Blue. I thought that she wrote that album about me because in our school colors were blue, right? And, songs are like tattoos, and the guys who were, you know, Canterbury School, the Catholic seminary, where the guys are going to be priests, wear the cassocks. The guys are going to be military guys, wear uniforms. Guys are going to be businessmen, wear three-piece suits. Anyway, that was a sick school. Really super. I mean, half the priests were pedophiles. That was totally game. The boys did it. The seniors and juniors they had a thing called fagging, where the freshmen were slaves to them and they had to do whatever. And if not, you got beat senseless. And my best friend, we were playing soccer and they kicked the ball up on the senior terrace and they grabbed him, beat him up unconscious, and then painted him with blue paint, oil based. Nearly died of skin suffocation. Songs are like tattoos, So that, anyway, I love Joni Mitchell. She's still great. There's and what I loved about Joni Mitchell, she was the artist in the first person. She represents the savage artist because every year she would turn out an album that wasn't the same old same. She didn't just keep doing Blue over and over again. No, every album was different. And she did one in the early O's, and it had a song on it called Doggy Dog. And every song of that was like, a warrior goddess just on fire with the, she did not mess around. She spoke truth to everything going wrong. So if you ever wanted an anthem to take on the street, just like the Rolling Stones, Revolution, Street Fighting Man, that album is like mind friggin'. She goes against the bankers, the priests, the politicians, and she has one song for each to uncover every materialism. And go look at her collection of albums and look for one song called Doggy Dog. Doggy Dog. It's like, and every album she would do a painting. She lived in Soho, and She came across my radar screen about 4 or 5 times in my life, and each time she was like Footloose and Fancy Free. Okay, I'll tell the thumbnail version of the Joni Mitchell story. I had a friend of mine who lived above the bitter end, and when I was, ooh, I guess, how old was I? I don't know, 13 maybe. Um, I would go on Fridays, and my grandma wasn't at our house making Italian dinner. I would go to my friend Buzzy's house and Mrs. D, and they were like super duper Italian, like my grandma. And so I would go there, and they had an apartment above the village bitter end, above the bitter end, and it was, you went through these doors, and they had fire doors in the back, but there was no green room, no anything. They just had it was a bar, a workers' bar that they turned into a coffee house bar for that kind of music. And the green room was the hallway